Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Town of Webb September regular meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'm gonna have this inside cool underneath forever.
No, I was like, I just couldn't figure out what that was.
Are you pausing?
I know, I might trip on it.
We'll figure that out. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Please sign at the attendance sheet, and please turn off your cell phones if they're on. The next regular meeting will be on October 11th at 7 p.m. October audit of claims meeting will be held October 3rd at 5:30 p.m. Executive session may occur this evening if deemed necessary. We received a letter of resignation from Nick Rose. He was an alternate on the planning board. I'd like to thank Nick for his many, many years on the planning board, and we thank him for his time and his commitment. On a request from the police chief, we would like to appoint Toby Lindfield, a Town of Inlet police officer, to be part-time officer for the Town of Webb Police Department, effective immediately. Officer Lindfield will cover shifts caused by vacations and sick days, etc. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make the motion to appoint Toby Linfield as part-time officer.
Second.
Is that Tommy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do we have some discussion on that?
I had some discussion, but I was just hoping that the chief might be able to answer some questions on it. One of my questions is we do a joint, I don't know if you guys might know this, but we obviously operate with Inlet on things. And my question was, if they don't have an officer that comes in sick or whatever, do our guys cover it? And do we pay our guys overtime to doing that?
No,
Versus,
no.
why don't they have their officer come down here when one of ours is?
This is not just a fill-in, this is so that Ron can actually schedule hours. So for instance, right now what's going on is we've got a guy out on a maternity leave, his wife had a baby. They get 6 weeks instead of a few days now. So he's down one person, someone else is out for a health issue. So they're shorthanded. So by having, we have part-timers that we use in the snowmobile season and that. This is just somebody that he can, I called him today to find out that very thing, so that's why I'm stepping on this. It's just so that he has another person to fill those, so that we aren't paying overtime.
Yeah. Isn't Matt Turpinning is doing part-time at both departments, I believe.
Maybe up there, not down here. This would be our first part-time person.
No, we have two other part-time people
Part-timers.
from
Well,
Inlet. So this would be a
help with
third part-time
overtime
from
issues,
Inlet.
Right.
Right, I mean, that's the thing
Yeah,
So,
to fill in when needed.
right.
Basically, when they schedule out, if they know in 3 weeks that there's gonna be down 2 officers, if he, on the days he's available, that he's not working, they could fill him into the schedule so they know there's not dark spots in the timeframes that there's
and this
coverage.
person is full-time with Inlet right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're covering all of everything as far as wages and all that stuff.
Well, he'll get paid by us for the hours that he works.
What do we pay part-time employees?
But it'll prevent that overtime.
Excuse me, could you talk a little louder? If we're to hear this conversation, it's kind of private maybe, I don't know.
Sorry, no, it wasn't
No,
intended.
that's
No.
I didn't really realize we needed another part-time. Every time we sit there and talk to the chief or the sergeants that he hired, well, we're all set up, we got this guy, we're gonna have less overtime, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and the next thing, here we are again. And it just seems like it's been years of this. The same conversation, and overtime is still there.
Right, so this doesn't budgetarily change anything. It just gives him the availability to call someone in. So, I mean, either our guys they don't want overtime that particular time, or they're not available for that overtime. but it saves us money having this person. We have to uniform him, but that's really the only added expense. They don't get benefits, so.
We need more part-timers.
Yeah.
That would help with overtime, if there were more part-time officers, that's how it worked back in the day.
And do we have a pay schedule for that person, by chance?
No, I do not.
But we have part-timers already being paid, so I'm sure that that's something that we can access pretty easily to see what
What that number
the
is?
rate is, right?
Anything else?
No, I guess not.
I'm having a hard time adding another. Yeah, you can go ahead, go do a roll call vote, please.
Councilman Gardner,
Aye.
Councilman Greco,
Aye.
Councilwoman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Ross,
I'm having a hard time with this one, I gotta tell you. Nay.
Supervisor Baker.
Nay.
3 ayes, 2 nays. Passed.
The town board held a public hearing on July 14th to hear all persons for or against local law number 2022. A local law creating chapter 387 of the code of the town of Webb to regulate short-term residential rentals. At the August board meeting, the board tabled the decision. What is the pleasure of the board?
Discussion first, or?
I need to make a motion.
Motion?
I'll make a motion.
I second it.
What's the motion?
Motion to
What
accept.
is the
Motion to
motion?
accept it.
To accept it?
Accept, thank you.
Okay.
And Barb,
And
did you?
Barb seconded?
Barb,
Yes.
Yes. Discussion?
I have discussion. I always have discussion.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
say that I don't think it's enough. I've said that from the beginning, but I feel like we have to get something in place to kind of get the ball rolling with the whole situation before it, I mean, it already is pretty far gone with that, but I think in the future, adding stuff or changing or adapting when it comes to zoning or the number of permits, because I feel like the non-owner occupied thing is the issue around here. And limiting the amount of permits you can have would help with that. The ultimate goal, I think, is zoning. I think doing it by zoning and limiting it in our neighborhoods and such is the best way to tackle the issue with the short-term rentals. But for now, it's been too long. We have to get something in place and hope to adjust it in the future.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mhm.
Go ahead.
I did have actually a couple questions, and maybe it explains it, but to me it didn't explain a couple of things. And Andy, hopefully maybe you can help me out with this one, or maybe Barb's been really. When you guys go and inspect a place, I think what we're talking about is this thing is going to be effective on January 1st. When you guys go and inspect and this person didn't pass, obviously those people that are renting already have this booked, I'm sure, for next year and probably the year after and who knows how long. What kind of, is there any time frame that they can work with on you with that? You know what I'm saying? I mean, if by January, it's like, if they don't get it inspected right away, you guys are gonna be busy. I'm pretty sure you guys are gonna be going nuts after this. You can't get to it till December, and they're gonna say, I got this place rented, and it didn't pass. How much time do they have to get this thing up and running?
There's no one answer for the number of potential violations that could be found. Some are gonna be very simple, smoke alarms, smoke detectors, handrails, those are simple things, those are life safety things. If it's a bigger issue of a septic system that failed, or something of that nature, and they'll be given a reasonable period of time to correct, reasonable being 30 or 60 days. If it's in the middle of winter, then maybe they can't do it because of weather conditions. If there's effluent on the ground, or odor, or obvious, or anything getting into a lake, stream, or wetland, that's cause to close the building for any property.
And you've been checking that as far as things are anyways.
We've
along
had
the
some
way.
this summer where they failed to dye test. We ordered the water be shut off in the house.
Mhm.
That would apply to anybody.
Correct, understood,
You wouldn't be grandfathered for that.
right.
That's part of the underlying reason for the local law. So a lot's gonna depend on the type of potential violation that's found.
And if you are quite overwhelmed with inspections, and I'm just, the reason why I'm asking these questions, because I've kind of done a lot of research, asking people things. This isn't an easy thing for me to grasp this whole thing. So I've been asking a lot of questions, and you get pros and cons all through the community. People that want it, people that don't, why, anyways. So some of these questions, I didn't really have a good answer, and I before I go crazy, I'd like to know some of these things. So anyways, the folks that you didn't get to by January, there's a potential that's gonna happen. Some of these people aren't even here right now.
I mean, if we get buried with applications to the extent that we can't keep up with them within a reasonable period of time, 1, 2, 3 weeks, I'll come in and talk with the board and say, hey, we need a little relief.
Okay.
I think that's something I can do administratively right out of my office.
Right, okay, that's,
It's called discretionary enforcement.
mhm.
You know, cars going to Utica, they all go at 63, 64 miles an hour, and state trooper, they go through a speed trap, discretionary enforcement. He lets them go. We may have information in the file on a particular property where there's been previous permits issued, new septic systems, recent remodeling. So we may have things in the file that would make that inspection easy, almost administrative. Because we have documentation in the office. We do have thousands and thousands of files. Been here almost 22 years and 400 permits a year. That's a lot of permits and files and information that's been generated in just my time frame. So I don't anticipate being inundated with hundreds and hundreds of applications that we can't deal with in a reasonable period of time. Of course, this is the new time for this law, so maybe I'll be surprised, but I think we're ready to handle it in a reasonable manner. We got 3 of us ready to go.
Okay, all right, good. Just a couple of things that popped up recently with questions and talking to people. And, I will say that, in my opinion, the board, the community has bashed this around a lot. We've rewritten this thing, I don't know how many times now, 11 or 12. And got to a point where I think it's reasonable. So I do believe we need to do something, so
12
something.
revisions and 2 major public hearings, so.
Right. You have to start with something, so okay, I'm good.
Thank you. Barb, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Kurt?
I just want to say, like, we talked about it before in the past, you know, as far as the revenue coming in, I know people have questioned, you know, where's all this revenue going to go to? It does cost money to staff this and do it, but, you know, it is an unknown factor here where it's going to actually fall into place, technically speaking, I guess. And so I'd just like to state it again that, you know, being that's a new revenue source potentially, you know, I would like that we are, you know, it's like we need recreational infrastructure support in the community, and so if there is extra money that's coming in, I would like to see it being dedicated to the recreational infrastructure for the time being, to make sure that we have the things that people like to come here for working properly.
Correct.
So
I don't know that we can dedicate
No, but-
specifically like that, because there's other needs also,
Correct.
you know, so, talking with Scott Gaffney the other day, he was talking about the increased amount of hauling of garbage that we do with the numbers of people that we have, so a lot of the towns, you know, that type of infrastructure is impacted by the increased number of people that we
No,
experience.
and I agree with that. I'm just saying, like, in
Right.
general though, I mean, those are the things that we have to keep looking at now as the increase, because it is, obviously, we can see on papers how much more we're hauling out
Right.
Oh, yeah.
than we have in the past, so, and that's an increase of more use of being in the area, but,
And not only that, but more expensive.
so, but, so I mean, those things have to be taken into account, but I'm just saying, in general, if there is,
Sure.
you know, it would be nice that we dedicate some of that money back into the recreational aspect of
Sounds
it, if
good.
possible.
All right, I almost feel like we need a drum roll. Nancy, want to do a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Gardner,
Aye.
Councilman Greco,
I,
Councilwoman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Ross,
Aye.
Supervisor Baker,
Aye.
5 ayes. I will file it tomorrow.
Shall we give you a hand after how long?
Thanks,
while.
Steve.
Can I ask a question on the ordinance?
In the end, you can. We still have some more business, please. We're establishing an energy benchmarking, whereas buildings are the single largest user of energy in the state of New York. The poorest performing buildings typically use several times the energy of the highest performing buildings for the exact same building use. And whereas collecting, reporting, and sharing business energy data on a regular basis allows municipal officials and the public to understand the energy performance of municipal buildings relative to simple buildings nationwide. And equipped with this information, the town of Webb is able to make smarter, more cost-effective operational and capital investment decisions, reward efficiency, and drive widespread continuous improvement. And whereas the Town of Webb Town Board desires to use building energy benchmarking, a process of measuring a building's energy use, tracking that use over time, and comparing performance to similar buildings to promote the public health, safety, and welfare by making available good, actionable information on municipal building energy use to help identify opportunities to cut cost and reduce pollution in the town of Webb. And whereas the town board desires to establish procedure or guidelines that have been determined for the town of Webb staff to conduct such building energy benchmarking. Now therefore, it is hereby resolved and determined that the town of Webb adopts a benchmarking process. Do we have a motion?
I'll
Make,
make,
oh, go ahead.
I'll make the motion.
A second?
A second.
And some discussion?
Yahoo. Let's do it.
All right. Nancy, would you like to do a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Gardner,
Aye.
Councilman Greco,
Aye.
Councilwoman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Ross,
Aye.
Supervisor Baker,
Aye.
5 ayes.
The Town of Webb Town Board has reviewed a school resource officer agreement between the Town of Webb Police Department and the Town of Webb Schools. The agreement in its entirety is available at the town clerk's office. Do I have a motion
I'll make a motion.
and a second?
I'll second it.
And any discussion on this?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very valuable combination of resources again. Very important.
Anyone else? Nancy, would you like to do a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Gardner,
Aye.
Councilman Greco,
I,
Councilwoman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Ross,
Aye.
Supervisor Baker,
Aye.
5 ayes.
Hamilton County would like to mount an EMS 911 communication equipment on the Herkimer County EMS 911 communication tower located at Macaulay Mountain. Whereas pursuant to an agreement dated March 6, 2018, the town has granted Herkimer County the right to maintain and access an EMS 911 radio communication tower, equipment shed, backup generator, and fence on town land at Macaulay Mountain. And whereas Herkimer County has advised the town of Webb that it wishes to allow Hamilton County the right to access the tower and mount additional EMS 911 radio antenna and related equipment upon the tower and the shed and other town property at no cost to the town. And whereas the town board of the town of Webb finds that allowing such access and use would serve the interests of the residents of the town by increasing radio communications effectiveness for emergency responders within and near the owned. Now therefore be it resolved that upon the adoption of this resolution, the town supervisor and town council are authorized to prepare, execute, and deliver such documents and instruments as required to grant Hamilton County the right to access, erect, and maintain an EMS 911 radio communication equipment upon town property at Macaulay Mountain without further resolution of the board. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
In a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
No, that's what that tower was supposedly all about, is just EMS and that's what it's for. If
Sounds
it makes
good.
it better, good deal.
Nancy, would you like to do a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Gardner?
Aye.
Councilman Greco?
Aye.
Councilwoman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Ross?
Aye.
Supervisor Baker?
Aye.
I don't know.
Restore New York grant. I need a motion to hold a public hearing on September 20th, 2002 at 6 p.m. for the new Town of Webb's Restore New York grant application and to authorize publication of a legal notice for the hearing. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion.
In a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I will not be here for that.
Okay.
What is the date on it?
The 20th, 6 o'clock.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Nancy, would you like to do a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Gardner?
Aye.
Councilman Greco?
Aye.
Councilwoman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Ross?
Aye.
Supervisor Baker?
Aye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that's all our business for tonight. We're gonna go through the council people, myself and Nancy, and then we're gonna have some time for the public. So, Councilman Gardner, do you have anything tonight?
Just a couple things. Adirondack Tech did start the installation of the fiber optic lines or high-speed internet going down North Street and heading out towards Rondex. And they called yesterday, and I think that it sounds like they're gonna have the cable run all the way around to all the destinations by the end of the week. So they were well past Carter Station when I talked to them yesterday. I'm not sure how far they got in the rain, but they were plugging along pretty fast out there. They said within the next week or two they'll start hooking up individual people. So if there are people out there, it's not a town thing, but we're just trying to help out with getting the areas that don't have internet. If you are along that line, reach out to them. Let them know you want to get hooked up, I guess. They didn't tell me to tell you that, but sounds like they're going to start hooking people up. So I think they have a list already. I know you're going to ask, and I'm going to. If it doesn't happen this year, we'll try to put it in the budget so that we can figure out what it will, so we can have internet at that location.
Okay.
And I know it's also been talked about with Eagle Bay, possibly having internet at the Eagle Bay Information Center there. We haven't gotten too far with that, but it'll be a discussion during budget time. And then mountain bike trails, they're continuing to work on trails up there right now. AFTA is doing that, and there's been some conversations of trying to figure out how to do the trail coming down Maple Ridge, and connecting back in over to the parking lot there, for mountain biking. That discussion's still going, just the train going between the Maple Ridge and behind the school bus garage, and that is proving to be very difficult and can be done, but the expense of it is gonna be crazy to go through that terrain, so they're looking at alternative routes, which haven't been approved yet. And I guess that's all they really, that's it for now.
Thank you, Kurt. Tommy?
Yeah, I got a couple things. Start with the rec center there, because we got some things to address when it comes to, you know, the first month of having it open to people, and kind of us having the need to get more acclimated to it and adjust to, you know, having this, you know, really nice facility to use. One of the issues we had was the floor being slippery, and people were thinking it was the floor and all this. Well, it's really just any floor that has humidity issues is going to act that way. And, you know, we didn't have the fans on, and that was creating a, you know, an unsafe surface. Turn the fans on, that humidity goes away, the floor acts just as a normal floor should. It's just hard to compare some things because it used to be concrete, where it's just there's no issues because it's a concrete floor. And it's, you know, it's not slippery at all, but it's also not safe, and there's not many things you could do on it before. So it's just another thing of getting used to, you know, what we have here, people that are operating it and doing the best they can to get people in there, you know, kind of getting educated on what needs to happen. There have been cases in certain rec centers with floor like this, or even gym floors, where if there's too much humidity, they won't let anybody in it because it's that bad. Hopefully we won't have that happen because those overhead fans we have above it. We had the marathon in there last weekend, and it seemed to go pretty well. There's one issue when the overhead doors are open, the direct sunlight. They need to come and move the transitions where the doors are so that the floor can expand a little bit, so they can just kind of buckling up. They're aware of that. They're coming to fix that. That's just another thing we're just trying to get used to down there. The guy who ran the marathon drove his truck and trailer in there, no problems. Just last night I went down there to watch our fire trucks go in there. Massive fire trucks, you know, 15,000 pounds plus full tanks, because if there is a call right now, they're going to pull them out of the rec center. And they have firemen's weekend coming up, and there was no issues with those fire trucks going in there. Again, it's just a matter of us getting used to it. It was just off to a rough start. We got to open. People wanted to get in there. I kind of just asked people to just bear with us. Jackie has a lot going on already as our rec director, and I feel like having a facility like this and trying to schedule everybody and take on everybody wanting to get in there is a lot for someone to handle. I think moving forward we should look into maybe having some sort of part-time position, or even accepting somebody as a volunteer to maybe you know, deal with all that goes on over there, with meeting people when they come to use it, whether it's for a wedding or for an event, or you know, phone calls that are made. I don't think Mrs. Russell should have to deal with, you know, all those phone calls on informing people and letting people know how it is and all that. She could just pass that on to this person. I think having more of a direction over there will help out with the facility itself, because it has really been used just for those events in the past, and a little bit with that soccer turf over the winter. As far as the issues inside of it, Jason from Tyler Construction was up here. He met with Alex Ross and I. Alex you know, works for the town, and he knows that building more than most, and he was present for it. And Jason from Tyler Construction was there when we built it 20 years ago, and he was very informative and offered us some ways we can insulate it and you know, make it more efficient when it comes to heat. There's panels they can put up on the overhead doors that will cover that will keep the heat in the insulated panels. They have siding on the outside of them. They'll have metal siding on them, so it pretty much will act like an acting wall for those overhead doors, which will insulate the building even more. They're removable, so we can take them off as we want. The actual floor itself, now that it's in there, has the shock pad underneath it, and the floor will also help when the place is being heated, because the floor will be not as cold from, you know, the ground. The other thing was 3 10-foot fans would be in there, could be in there to circulate the air more, to push the heat down. The issue that Mike was talking about with the overhang with the soffit there, how it's not insulated, that's why it's kind of shelves up a little bit on the North Street side where it can be a hazard. They had talked about removing that metal soffit and insulating it, and also fixing the roof leaks. So they actually gave us some numbers of what we can do. The fans, those 3 10-foot fans were like $25,000 in order to do that. There's different options. Those panels came out to about the same for those panels around the area to insulate the building. And then to remove the metal soffit, re-insulate that, and to fix the roof leaks that aren't happening right now but have happened in the past, to kind of fix those once and for all, that was $5,400. So they gave us some different options of what we can do to fix that. And Dan Kiefer has also been a part of this, and he's offered up saying that we just got $5,000 through NYSERDA through our successful solar campaign, which gives us 4 high impact grants, I guess. 4 high.
Check marks towards.
Yeah.
Yes.
Check
Something-
marks.
thank you.
Points or
Yeah.
what?
So that would allow for $25,000 in money that could be used for that. It can be used in other ways too, but for clean energy down there, that could help to pay for some of the stuff. We don't have to do all of these options, but I think it's something that we should look into when it comes to providing a better facility and making it more efficient over there. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the parking meters and the overnight docking. Just kind of hammered both of those out. I know Kurt has a lakefront plan that he's getting the ball rolling on over here to redesign the lakefront, but we don't know how long that will take. I think we're missing out on generating some revenue over here when it comes to the 76 parking spots that we have. We can do car parking right there with 4 meters. These meters are $8,700 a piece. To just do July and August, between 10 a.m. and 8 p.m., I would say these spaces are full. That's 10 hours. They usually do like $2 an hour. 20 times 70, it's around $1,500 per day. You take $1,500 per day, times that by 30, that's $45,000 a month in revenue that can be generated. So that's just for 1 month, July and August, give or take. We put them in June. We take them out after Columbus Day, and they're removable, and we can just store them away. There'd be 4 across the street parking for cars, and I think that's a good chunk of money. I personally believe that we have wages going up. I know the Airbnb fees are people are worried about, but it costs a lot of money to make this town what it is, in my opinion. And I think we have a lot of workers here who, are going to be, if we can't pay them what they're looking for, we're going to be looking for other employment. I think there's more services and things that we have to offer that are going to cost money, and everything just going up in general. Where do we find this money? And I think things like the Airbnb and this stuff can help with that. When it comes to the boat parking, I don't think we should be opening up the whole lakefront. I think it's great to be able to pull up here and know you can guarantee a parking spot to go into the town. I just think if we looked into, let's just say 10 spots, those are actually cheaper, those meters. They're $7,000 because they wouldn't be coin and cash operated. The ones in the lakefront would be, you could do coin cash credit. The ones in the lake would just be the card, so they're actually cheaper. Those ones could start at a base price, and they would go up as you use them to finally, eventually not letting you use it anymore because you've used them for numerous days. But to start out, just for those numbers, if it was $30 a night, I don't know what we would set it at or how it would work. 20 for overnight docking, or if there was like a 3-day pass you could do or something along those lines, just for these 10 spots. Let's say we chose over here by the tennis courts. I know that's been talked about before. $300. I mean, you're looking at $9,000 a month for that too, and it's just something that I think that we need to look into when it comes to generating revenue. And I think the town of Webb is one of the most inexpensive places to visit, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but I think these things will help us keep that, providing for what we have to do here. That's all I have.
Thanks, Tommy. Barb?
Sure, just a couple quick things. I hope I'm not stepping on your comments, but an application for the Community Block Development Grant for scattered site rehabilitation of existing housing in the town of Webb has been sent in on time. If successful, this grant will serve Webb homeowners based on severity of need and a first-come, first-served approach. The maximum amount that we could receive is $500,000, which could go a long way in helping people with improvements on their homes, on existing homes in our communities. So fingers crossed on that. There's already a committee in place that the supervisor has selected to work with the town in determining who would be served among the local homeowners who have completed the needs survey for us. So we're hoping for success on that. Recently, Bonnie and I had a meeting with the SHARP Activities Director, Linda Grace, and the supervisor appointed senior committee members a week or so ago. We're fine-tuning the move of the SHARP program into their new home in the former Hildebrandt house that's owned by the school. They're in the process of getting an item list to Nancy. I don't know if they've gotten that.
We've got a partial list.
Okay. That's for furniture and other needs. The Community Health and Wellness Fund is going to pay for these items. I did ask if they go over that amount that's budgeted by the Community Health and Wellness Fund, that they let us know so that we can budget for 2023. That's not something we can just start buying random items because we haven't planned on it budgetarily. I also met with Rex and Diane Haru and Mike Gardner at school for my monthly liaison meeting, and we discussed the need for air conditioning in the same building. So we all agreed that a mini split system would be the best way to address seasonal heating and cooling in that house for the senior participants. Mike Gardner is familiar with these. The school's installed several in classrooms. So he'll recommend locations for the installation. And I've asked Scott Gaffney to include an amount in his budget for buildings because I believe that would be a town expense to purchase this equipment. The school otherwise would not do that. So we can discuss that next month at budget time and hopefully get some quotes in 2023. And that's all.
Thank you,
Do you
Barb.
have any kind of an open house or anything for that?
You bet we are.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we
I'd
are.
like to see how
Yes.
it is.
It's beautiful.
Yep, it's amazing.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to thank Nick Rose for his time serving on the planning board. Yes. And did get a call from Corey Reed. I know he's been working with Nancy. Those two have been figuring out a lot of stuff on the sewer plant deal. We did get the extension, correct, Nancy, for 2020. We don't have to be done until 2023, I think. 2024. 2024 now, so we got that extension. And I know that right now you're working on the headworks to try to get all that stuff through the DEC, right? I mean,
We put all the grant applications are all in.
right,
Good.
so
We finished them
still
last week.
moving, but
It was a nightmare.
slowly but moving. And we still didn't receive the $1 million deal. We still didn't get the exact
Correct,
got it yet.
correct, we have not.
We need to get
On either
that.
one of them.
Right,
Yeah, there's two of them open.
Yep, we haven't gotten
One we
any.
should hear on in October that I did,
okay.
so
But
hopefully.
he's staying
Fingers
on it,
crossed.
so. I thank him
Living
and
in
Nancy,
UK?
because they've been, I mean, he stays on it, you know, it's
Yeah,
been a
he's-
long time, and
he's really good.
he's been working with it, so I thank him. So that's all I got, thanks.
Okay, I got a few things. Rick Brewer, our dog control officer, would like to get pre-exposure shots for rabies through the Herkimer County Health Department. They're $325 per shot, and it's a series of 3 shots. Much cheaper than if something happens and he has to go for the 5-shot rabies program. So I suggest that we go ahead and
Everyone got a letter in their box.
Yeah. that's-
approve that, if everybody's okay with that.
It makes sense to me.
Can we tell them?
Okay, and we received our letter from Lime Adirondack Forest Company agreement for 2022-23. There's an increase of 3% from last year, bringing our payment to $40,700. This will be paid January 10th, and that's just an FYI that that's coming our way. I had street lighting training meeting today. It was a 1-hour session. Next Tuesday I have a 2-hour session. And then we'll be on track to see what's working and what's not right from here. We are aware that there are some problems right now that there's broken arms and there are street lights that are out, and we are addressing those. We have a beaver control issue on Trail 5, causing flooding. Our dog control officer also owns Moose River Wildlife Control, and he's a wildlife officer. Chuck Betts would like to hire his services. We have the permit to do that through the DEC. There's a trap retainer fee of $125 per trap and $25 per beaver after they're caught. So Chuck would like to hire him for that. So we need approval for that. Everybody good? Okay.
Does he sell beaver pelts afterwards?
I'm not sure. I didn't want to ask any of that. The 90 Mile Canoe Classic was this past weekend. A huge thank you to all the organizers, paddlers, pit crews, and spectators. Everyone was very excited and really happy to be there. It was really fun to go down there and watch. There was a small fog delay, but as soon as that burned off, it was a beautiful weekend. And I want to put a huge shout out to Mike Farmer. I don't think anybody really realizes what that man does for our town. When I went to go to Kurt's to watch his dogs on Friday night, Mike Farmer was out pounding stakes and signs in on North Street, on the street. I came down at 6 a.m. and he was out here all by himself, hooking up all of the stuff so that we could talk, everything on the dock all by himself. He was out there removing all of the goose droppings before the big event. He literally was working so hard, and I really just want to give a shout out to him and thank him. He works really hard for us, and he does a lot behind the scenes that I don't think anybody even sees.
I don't know if you ever see him on his days off too, he seems like he's walking up down Main Street picking up cigarette butts.
Picking up cigarette butts on Main Street, so.
And you see him sitting in that office.
So if you guys
after
see him,
hours,
tell him
late at
thank
night.
you.
Thanks,
He's in there
Mike.
late at night. Is he here?
He was here.
Oh, he is. He's right out in the hall. Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. That's all I have, Nancy.
I only have one thing, winter garbage schedule, believe it or not, is taking effect on Monday, so there'll be a change in the garbage schedule. It's been in the paper and it's online. So
Is that
yeah,
also the transfer station?
transfer station doesn't change until October. This is strictly garbage and recycling pickup only.
Okay, now we're on to public topics, and if you would please state your name for the record so we know who we're talking to. Thank you. Anybody?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
David Christopher, I just had a question on the ordinance, on the fines for non-compliance. It seems like those are relatively low based on what somebody could be in non-compliance of. Could you guys maybe elaborate more on that?
Anyone want to step in? Go ahead.
If you're commenting on what the fines are right now, the way it's written.
Yes.
My comment is this is the beginning of a process, but I don't know what else to say.
Well, if it's the severity of the implications, though, then Andy will have to step in.
Oh, no, and I understand that, but I think the way that it's written, it doesn't really have a severity index in the ordinance. The way I understood it is if you're out of compliance with the ordinance, it's a $300 fine, which seems on the lower side of, someone's renting their house for $3,000 a night, for example.
So, but there is a 3 strikes and you're out, and I don't have it in front of me.
I do. There's a second violation that's $700. The first one is $350. The second one is $700. The third one is to be not more than $1,000.
And revoked or no? The third.
Right,
The
and
ability-
Fine in,
Yeah, that's right.
or it could be taken away. It's not. It's up to your discretion.
Off the top of my head, I don't.
each period.
What's it say?
There is a potential to pull the license and then you have to get.
Each week of a continued violation shall constitute a separate additional violation. So if they're still not doing what they're,
350, 700, 1,000.
And it doubles every week if it continues.
So it does get
Yeah,
bigger.
expensive.
it does
Yeah.
get bigger, and
If
it's a
it's-
civil penalty of not more than $2,000 per day for the violation.
I think it's expensive.
Anything else? Yes, Linda? Sorry.
Sorry,
Just go down
I'm Linda Wheel. And I am just wanna keep stating that I'm interested in, fundraising for a police canine vehicle. Right, I just wanna keep stating that so that it doesn't fall off the radar. Brought it up at a couple meetings now. At the last meeting, seemed like maybe come budget time, you would have a better understanding of what might be needed for a fundraising goal or for the town's expense, however that broke down. A little bit unclear, but certainly I would like to just keep stating that, so. I have now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Steve?
First question, the 40,700, that's the land lease for the snowmobile trails?
That's
Yes.
correct, yes.
Okay. All right. The, last month, the short-term rental law was tabled because you were going to have the company inquire about how many properties, et cetera. Did we get a report?
We have a report of about 500. We did not purchase the software yet. We will be purchasing it, but they did give us a scope of approximately.
Okay.
And those, and there are some that aren't registered, so.
Okay. So, okay. All right. Some questions on the law itself. The title of it is Local Law Creating Chapter Code of Town of Webb to Regulate Short-Term Residential Rentals. After reading through all this, where is the section that actually regulates them? Because it's still, there's nothing in here that's saying we're only gonna have 500. It doesn't say we're gonna have 1,000. What's gonna keep the momentum from continuing as it is?
There isn't anything there right now.
Because, I mean, I've even had real estate agencies say to me, I wish the town would put something in place because we don't even have stock, because before, people would say, we don't use our camp anymore, let's sell the damn thing. Well, now they're saying, we don't use our camp anymore, we're gonna turn it into Airbnb. And they're generating income. So, what's gonna keep, what's next step that's gonna stop the momentum from going?
That was not the intent of this law.
Correct.
So
What
I-
Andy just said, it was not the intent, this was not the intent of the law. It was to regulate in the sense of getting people registered so that we are aware, making sure that they're compliant with health, safety, and welfare of, what we need it to be. So a lot of it reflects on what the existing code is. That was what the intent of this law was. Future stuff, I guess you'll have to wait and see, and maybe you'll be invited to be on the next committee. We have to get, we finally got this one on the books, so let's see what comes next.
Okay. I've written up a letter that I'd like to read tonight. I know you guys are tired of hearing me on this, but I feel it's very important to our community. I came to the town board in 2018 after seeing a news story and interview with a local resident of Cooperstown, New York, on a short-term rental law they passed. In the interview, they said it was a good law, that it would keep their community a place where people could and wanted to live. Since then, we have seen several residents served eviction notices so properties could be turned into short-term rentals, and locals are being outbid by as much as $70,000 for a house. And when the new owners take over, it is turned into a short-term rental. So that covers the could part of the interview. And what part, and the want part is coming about. I have talked to many people that are rethinking their plans of retiring and staying at Old Forge, and one person is to the point that they're putting road cones on the property line when the houses next to them are rented because they are tired of the guest parking in his yard. That was in 2018. 2019, I came to the board and proposed buying 5 houses on Moose River Trail to put up a motel. The board told me I couldn't do that. It's a residential neighborhood and motels aren't allowed. I said, okay, I'll buy the 5 houses and rent them out out of my motel office to different people every day of the week. The zoning officer was at that meeting and he said I could do that. But that was a loophole in the law that needed to be addressed. To this day, that loophole has not been fixed, and we now have investors with numerous properties, and I have heard one has 13 doing just what I brought to the board's attention. So I would say I'm 2 for 2 on my concerns that I brought to the board about short-term rentals. I'd like to ask Barb and the board to contemplate something. When Barb started her shop across the street from the post office, I'm guessing she had to go to the planning board, zoning, and the state for her shop. During that time, I had heard there was a lady on Hollywood Hills Road that was cutting hair 1 day a week at her home. She was just making extra money for whatever reason, and I'm sure it wasn't any threat to Bob or her shop. Let's imagine as time went by, more people started doing the same thing, and all of a sudden there was 1, 2, or more people doing the same thing on just about every street in Old Forge. How long do you think it would be before Barb did notice what was going on and became a threat to her? In a 500-foot radius of Tim Associates building, numerous properties have been converted to short-term rental use, and combined they have more bedrooms for rent than some of the area motels, one of them being the property that Barb used to own. I have heard more than once that the board doesn't want to put an undue burden on property owners that are doing short-term rentals. Has the board thought about the burden they are putting on the area hotel, motels, bed and breakfast, and cabin colonies? A perfect example of this is Baker's Brookside Motel, a 4-room motel that I'm guessing sleeps 16 people. They have to abide by all the local and state laws, but a house on Hollywood Hills Road that was bought and turned into a short-term rental that sleeps 20 doesn't. The town's master plan clearly talks about the effect that short-term rentals can have on our community in numerous places, under hot button topics, threats, and even an appendix on it. How is this law addressing the problems highlighted in the master plan? When the members of the board take office, they become stewards of our community, or almost like becoming a parent of the community. I am sure the board is getting a lot of pushback from property owners about this law. But as a parent, do you give in to a child just because they keep bugging you for what they want? Or do you do what is best for them? Or as stewards, what is best for our community and the residents? I understand the board has obligations to property owners, but when did it become the obligation to make sure that the people can afford the property? One of my concerns for 2020 and the effect of short-term rentals having on our community, how many more long-term rentals will be lost and how much of our workforce will move away? As more properties get converted to short-term rentals, it becomes harder to fill them and less lucrative. How long do you think it will be before the pricing wars start between them? I've already seen prices drop on some short-term rentals. What effect is this going to have on the hotel, motel, and cabin colonies? There will always be a market for hotels and motels in the area. We are a tourist town. But will all of them be able to survive? As some have been bought as investment properties, and when the profit margins go down, it will be sold off. Who knows? Maybe this could be a good thing. One of the 2 properties I'm thinking about could be sold to Dollar General, and the other could be turned into affordable housing. And then on another footnote, something I came across in all my homework, in New York State law I came across and thinking, and I think I'm reading it correctly, is the primary New York State law that prohibits short-term rental occupancy, and in turn the use of Airbnb in New York State multiple dwelling law. The MDL applies to residential buildings with 3 or more units. It does not apply to single or 2-family homes. Section 4 of the MDL was revised in 2010 in response to the rise of Airbnb and proliferation of short-term rentals. And the reason I bring this up is there's 2 properties in town that have 3 or more rental units in them that they were long-term rentals. And I understand that they've been turned into short-term rentals. So is that against New York State law? So. And that's it.
For the record, I didn't sell my house to short-term rental people.
No.
For the record, I sold my house to a family
Yep.
that lived there for 10 years.
But like I said, in a 500-foot radius now, there's so many short-term rentals in that area that they literally could put me out of business. You know, they have more bedrooms than I have motel rooms. And that's, again, my concern is are we gonna take 4 or 5 years to get to our next step, or are we gonna try to do something before our whole community gets sold out?
I think for me personally, one of the reasons that I backed off the zoning thing, because that was what I was, set on from the beginning as soon as I got elected, was because that it wasn't holding up in court in other towns, and it was gonna be a longer process to get something in place when being done by zoning. And that's kind of why I just, wanted to get this ball rolling with this one, so maybe it could be addressed, later, even though it wasn't how I didn't agree with everything in here. It was, I felt something needed to be put in place at some point,
Well,
something.
Something I brought to the board a couple of years ago, and you weren't here at that time. I came across a town called Southfield, New York, that they put a zoning law into place. And they put a 14-day minimal for short-term rentals. And it went to the New York Supreme Court, and the New York Supreme Court ruled in favor of the town, because if you rent your house by the night, that is considered a hotel or motel, and that would never permit it in residential neighborhoods, and our zoning book says the same thing. So if all you have to do is implement a 7-day, which Andy originally had in our original law, in version 1, okay, would curtail a lot of it, and especially with the investment properties, if they only can rent it 2 days a week, and it has to sit empty 5, well, now it's not profitable. So they're gonna get rid of it.
Tom and I were talking earlier, and we've talked about this before. I don't care what big places do on the lakes. If we made a law that limited everybody to a 7-day rental, that's unfair to these places that would never ever be a home for any of our local people anyway. They're not gonna buy these places. Let's look at the villages, if you wanna address zoning, and that's what we've talked about, but we have a zoning update that is almost done. We're waiting to hear from the consultant with the final document so we can bring that to public hearing. I know this stuff takes time, I know it's frustrating, but we have to do stuff the right way. So we have this in place now. We've had people saying, why don't you have a moratorium? You can't have a moratorium if you don't have a law, if you don't even know who you're talking to. So, and I'm not suggesting a moratorium, just to be clear, that was said to me at one point. But I'm just saying, there's process, and it takes time, and it's been a horrible learning curve for Mr. Greco, the processes, because it is frustrating. You want to just do this stuff, but you know too, we want to get these things done in the right timely order so that we're not doing double duty or making mistakes. It's just the way it has to be. So people make fun of us because this has taken so long. The lawsuits are part of the reason why we waited. We were watching what was happening in other places, and why spend money on all of that stuff and get it sent back over and again. We've done our due diligence, and here we are at this point right now, which is a good point. So, like I said earlier, let's see what comes next.
Like I commented a little earlier, it's a start to this, because we have drilled at this for a long time. We're gonna learn too.
Thank you.
Kurt and I were on a phone call with Lake Placid board member that had advised us to go against trying to put zoning in now. I mean, she said put it in place, and that's when I kind of turned the page on letting the zoning thing go for now and just trying to get something going. And Emily, remember? Yeah.
Just for a point of clarity, what was passed tonight is not a zoning regulation, it's a local law by itself. The ordinance is chapter 480, and that's zoning. So the local law on rental is not part of zoning at this time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Martha Dumont, can you tell us what you have now in the works as your next step?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing specifically planned.
What should your next step be?
I'm not gonna.
We're working on
In
zoning.
regards to the,
I mean, you've studied other towns, with the same issue, waited to see what their outcome was for different laws that they passed. What would, using them as examples, what should our next step be?
I can't answer that, I don't know if anybody else can, but this is the result of that, this law tonight. is the
Well, we'd
result.
just like to hear that you're still working on the issue and
What did
working
I,
on
what
something
did I
else.
just
Zoning.
say? What did I
Zoning.
just say?
Zoning.
The
Right.
zoning, when Nan comes out with our zoning, which should be very soon, she's been working hard on that.
And who was that?
Nan Stolzenberg, she's our
consultant.
our consultant for that.
Okay, but that is not in regard specifically to short-term rentals, that's our update that we have to complete first, that's why I'm saying there's a process. So the next point, if we decide to move forward, the supervisor would appoint a committee of council people, someone from Andy's office, and members of the community and the planning board, and start another conversation. We're not there
Yeah.
tonight.
There's gonna be pros and cons to this, I'm sure, so we gotta learn.
Can
Right, I see.
someone give a scenario of how this would be applied? For example, you know, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house with a, 500-gallon septic tank. What does that look like from an ordinance perspective? It's like-
500-gallon septic tank has not been acceptable.
Oh, okay, I'm just throwing that, let's say 750, let's say 750.
750-gallon septic tank has not been acceptable since 1972 per New York State Department of Health.
Okay,
1,000-gallon has been the minimum size up to 3 bedrooms since 1972.
okay. So that's,
How many
let,
people?
let's go off that scenario then. Andy, I was just throwing that out there because I didn't know. So let's go off a 3-bedroom, 1,000-gallon septic tank with 1 bathroom. What does that look like from an occupancy perspective? I'd be.
Occupancy limit would have nothing to do with the number of bathrooms. It has everything to do with the number of bedrooms. And it's also going to depend on how big each bedroom is based on New York State Property Maintenance Code, which is part of the building code. A 3-bedroom home having 2 persons per bedroom would equate to a 1,000-gallon tank. A 4-bedroom home having 2 persons per bedroom would equate to a 1,250 tank.
I think what you're wondering is how many people could be in a 4-bedroom home is,
Yes,
what he's
because
saying
I
is he's
think-
basing the amount of people off of.
So my
However,
understanding is that.
I'm sure I'm gonna find a lot of this where tanks are technically undersized. Someone has a 1,000-gallon tank, they have 4 or 5 bedrooms. If the system has been operating for years, without failure, without any notice of failure, odor, effluent, etc., I think I will put a long-range time to exchange the tank for a properly sized tank. I'm not going to withhold a permit on someone who has a slightly undersized tank just because of that.
That
I
was
wouldn't
my
do
question
that.
before.
I wouldn't do that on anybody's home. If they had a house and they've had 4 bedrooms and they put a 1,000-gallon tank in 1980 and everything is working fine, and they really are using just 4 bedrooms and not using attic space and basement space and garage space for sleeping, I think I'll put them on a long-term notice, 6 months, please exchange your tank out. We'll inspect the tank or have it inspected. If there's signs of failure, just like anybody else, they should change the tank. If the tank is rusted out, old metal tanks, they have a life expectancy of 15 to 20 years, period. Any metal tank.
And tanks, you just need a permit, and
Yeah.
of course, the cost of somebody installing it.
You know,
But it's-
tank
it's
is
not a big
relatively
deal.
simple, doesn't require engineering and all that.
Correct.
Absorption areas or leach fields, that's where engineers are required by New York State requirements.
Yeah, I think what I was getting at is there's been a lot of feedback on, and again, I'm not necessarily I'm not against this. I'm against it being in coordination with regulations such as, like a motel, for example, they have an occupancy. So you have your bedrooms, you have your bathroom, 1, 2, 3, this is what you can hold. But I see a lot of these are, hey, we have 3 pull-out couches.
Right.
So that's
So
addressed
we-
in the law. Those things are addressed in the law.
Okay, I'm just asking,
So the way that, yeah, I think I can understand what you're saying now. So basically, when the inspection happens, the inspection's gonna dedicate how many people that the house is set up for. That will be also then hopefully tracked in some way. It can either be done by hiring these companies that have been interviewed, where they actually track it for you. Whether it's through advertising, so say if you have a 3-bedroom house and it's rated for 8 people and you see it's being advertised for 14 people and 8 bedrooms, that's gonna red flag right away. And that's how the control comes into place. So there is companies that can do that for you, or we can do it ourselves. That's the choice that needs to be picked here soon, but basically there would be, going through the permit process, there is a inspection of the house, there is gonna be a reported of what the house is dedicated for, how number of people, let's say occupancy, and that needs to be tracked, and that's how that goes into place, and that's where the different ordinances go and
Keep in mind that any residence that's served by a public sewer would not be subject to the same occupancy limit because they don't have a septic tank.
Right.
Now it's merely the health, safety, and of the property maintenance code as to what constitutes an appropriate sleeping area, and then setting the occupant load of that building based on that.
There was also a lot of comments were made, because like I said, I asked a lot of questions, and a lot of the comments were, once this is in place, the neighbors are gonna be your law enforcement. If there's too many cars there, if there's a big party going on, now that there's something, some sort of a permit process, they're gonna complain.
So we call codes? I mean,
Well, that's a good question.
We've interviewed 3 different hosting companies that do this professionally for many, many, many other communities all around the country. Options include letter writing, where they would contact owners and say, hey, you're required to get a permit. They can use whatever letterhead the town designates. They can provide notification. They can even receive the applications, get it to our office that same day. So if they have a 24/7 hotline or someone with a complaint can call, they will monitor the complaints, notify either 911, police, my office, fire department. There's a number of different hosting platforms that are very, very interesting. Obviously, they can't do the inspections and they don't do the field work that's going to be required. Our office is still going to have plenty of administrative in-house things, often record keeping, etc. We're looking at options. So we have 3 different options right now.
It'll be a combination between some sort of online entity that does track the stuff and boots on the ground here.
Yep.
So that will be worked out very soon, I would imagine.
Yes, Bruce?
I'd like, Bruce Prendergast, I'd like to thank the board for getting an SRO.
You're welcome. It was very, very much needed.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Robin Hill, hi. Any news on People First with their processes?
I have not heard. I'm waiting for an MOU from Bob Cali right now. So I have not heard anything yet. He was doing a bunch of, what was it that was going on for
Their own
him?
internal
There, thank you, internal audits that were going on. So he was very busy with that last month. And I'm expecting an MOU from him any day.
So that comes first before a market study, right?
Yes, sir.
Ron DeBrey. As long as Bruce didn't bring it up, I'd like to thank Casey Crowfoot for the job he did paving Park Avenue and getting the lines down there beautifully in the middle of the night so that school could be safe.
Make sure we tell him thank you.
It is very pretty.
It is nice. They did a great job over there.
Yes, he did.
Yes, ma'am.
Melinda Wheel, since we're just thanking everybody, I'm gonna thank Scott, because I had a sewer problem in the gallery. Thanks Bonnie for showing up right away and calling Scott. I found him in a manhole and on Labor Day, at night in the rain. And then I saw Dana out there too. So thanks to, the folks working on the sewer, because it's we know what kind of job it is, right? It's an adjective and it's funny, but I won't say it.
Thank you, Linda.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Bonnie, I just want to remind the board, September 29, the town of Webb is hosting a training program for planning board and zoning board of appeals members and interested elected officials at View. We've reached out regionally and we have registrants coming as far as Lake Placid, 100-mile radius, and we might have over 100 people at View on the 29th. So it's,
Do you need RSVPs from us if we want to attend?
yeah, contact Connie. Yeah, but most of our board members, we know are coming, and we'd love to have our elected officials there. And I'm gonna put Bonnie on the spot for 1 minute introduction, but 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll get Mike to write it for me.
Yeah.
He's still out
No, he
there.
September 29th.
And what was the hours for that? I know we
So
have a
Thursday.
thing somewhere.
It's 9:30 to 12:30, we break for, or, I'm sorry, 9:30 to 11:30, break for lunch, 1:30 to 3:30, I believe, and then a little time for questions and answers. Mark Shackner is the presenter.
Yeah, he's good.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I'd like a motion to pay the audit of claims, please.
So move.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Like a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Kurt?
Is that Kurt?
Kurt, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
everybody for coming. Thank you so much.